Did we do it? What's up, everybody? It's Justin. Welcome from Chiang Mai, Thailand. I'm now back in Chiang Mai, rocking my Eat Whole Foods Change the World 3/4 sleeve, available at iamclovis.com. Go check it out, everybody. You'll love it. So what's up? How you guys doing? It's been an amazing week. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I drank a bunch of coffee this morning and took a bunch of Siltep, which I love, great product, because travel's catching up with me, man. It's really catching up with me, and a lot of different things that I'm just not used to. I don't feel like myself right now. Like, really woke up this morning. For some reason, I was in bed for like 8 hours last night. Thanks to my little Oura ring over here, it told me that only 5 hours of that time was actually spent asleep. So that's a real bummer, everybody. Gonna be a tough day. You know, just got to get through this one and hope that my brain is sharp enough to teach you about a very important topic, and that is oils and fats and fatty acids and trans fats. Fat. Always talking about fat here at Clovis, right? It's important. So the reason I'm doing this episode is because I want to talk specifically about oils, fatty acids from oils. Here's the issue in Thailand. Thailand is very, very close, and at one point probably was absurdly healthy prior to like the 1980s, I would say, maybe the 1990s. And people talk about centenarians. I put a post about this the other day. Centenarians, the Okinawans in Japan, all these Asian people that have a high population of people who live to be over 100 years old. That's the definition of a centenarian, right? So the issue with that is, it's just like all nutrition science and medical and government and all this. We're 17 to 30 years behind the cutting edge data, right? So what's happening now in Asia that I see walking around here is thin grandparents, somewhat thin to lean adults, you know, middle ages, and fat little kids. It's just like America, but the adults are all fat in America. We're a generation ahead of them, you know? So what's happening is we have these 5-year-olds that are obese. They're morbidly obese at 5 years old. There's little Asian kids running around. They're cute as shit, but they're going to die young, and that's sad, right? So you got all these little fat Asian kids running around. Why? Well, because the Western diet has been introduced to Asia, refined processed carbohydrates and industrial seed oils, industrial vegetable oils, partially hydrogenated oils. These things are very cheap. They're easy to manufacture by the ton, literally, and they have just flooded the Asian market. There is nothing I've gotten here in Asia without sugar, without me specifically saying, do not put sugar in this. They put sugar in everything. They use vegetable oil on everything. And I mean, they coat it on with paint brushes. I'm not kidding. It's wonderful. I can go to a market and pay 15 cents and get chicken hearts, probably one of the most nutrient dense foods on planet Earth. And they're grilled right there over an open flame. Wonderful, right? Except the entire time they're grilling on an open flame, they're dipping a paintbrush in canola oil and caking canola oil every time they flip the meat. So now I'm getting a mouthful of canola oil, right? And with the language barrier, it's next to impossible for me to tell these people, don't do oil, just grill the meat. You know, they don't know how that works. They're used to doing the oil and then putting the seasoning on it. That's how they do things. And you're in the middle of a street market with thousands of people around. It's very difficult. Now, in restaurants, the same thing. If you get pad thai or something like that, it's in a big wok. And the first thing they do is pour, not sprinkle. They pour canola oil into this wok. These are damaged, rancid, oxidized, hydrogenated oils that will literally kill you in just about every way imaginable. That is why I am willing to live at a caloric deficit right now. I'm simply not going to eat a caloric surplus of these types of foods. It's not going to happen. You know, I'm not going to do it. So, I mean, I'm willing, when I get back home, I'll probably do a mass gains protocol. But I have learned from this alone, because this is permeated even into little mom and pop villages, right? I went into villages yesterday. These people, like, I mean, they're in the middle of nowhere. They're in the jungle, in the mountains, and they have canola oil and they have sugar and they're putting it on everything. It's ridiculous. Like, what are we doing, everybody? So mark my words, we are one generation or less from the same obesity epidemic that we see in America throughout all of Asia. It's going to permeate all of Asia. And the sad thing is, Some people are coming around to the sugar stuff and toxic oils in America. Maybe less than 5% of the population actually gives a shit or knows what's going on. In Asia, it's going to be even worse. They're going to be 20 to 30 years behind us, and the damage will already be done, just like it was done in the States. Chronic disease is no longer a thing of the past. Well, not even never of the past. It was never a thing in Asia. It is now. Guaranteed. Chronic disease is going to run rampant in Asia. Super sad. It's really been bumming me out to watch. I can't stay in Thailand long term. There's no way, just because of this. Because grocery shopping and cooking for yourself is so inconvenient. Eating out is a nightmare, just because you're going to be getting these toxic oils in your life. And I can manage that for a few weeks, but I just can't. I know too much. I know too much. I literally lose sleep, just like, oh my God, I ate oil today. Right? It's that bad. So let's talk about it. This is what brings this episode to be, is I'm just not willing to eat the same number of calories when everything is coated in canola oil, right? So let's talk about fats. You guys know that at Clovis, we're a huge fan of fats. It's most of your caloric intake, usually somewhere between 55 to 65% of your caloric intake, depending on you. Now, remember, I make custom plans for everybody. There are never blanket statements. So your fat intake is probably all different. If you guys were to have custom plans and compare your macronutrients, your fat ratio is going to be different depending on your goals. That's why I make custom plans for everybody. Now, one of the biggest hurdles for me with Clovis has always been, particularly with women, convincing them that eating all that fat is good for you, convincing them that dietary fat is actually a superfood. Why is it so difficult for me to convince them of that? Well, because the freaking US government and all your doctors have been telling you the opposite for over 40 years, okay? It's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it's incredibly difficult because the government and the food pyramid and the doctors and everything have been telling you that eating fat is bad for you. Eating saturated fat is bad for you, blah, 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 blah. Now, as a result, they've been telling us for 40 years, and Americans are dropping dead by the millions. Literally, I talk about this almost every week because I need it to sink in. Over 100 million Americans are pre-diabetic and diabetic. A full 88% of those don't even know that they're pre-diabetic or diabetic. Over 70% of the population is overweight. Over 50% of all adults have at least one chronic disease. Over 25% of all adults have more than one chronic disease. 27% of children have at least one chronic disease, and 1 in 45 kids is born on the autism spectrum. What are we doing, everybody? So a simple layman's way to put this is, if you do what the government tells you, you'll die. It's simply that simple. I don't even know how else to put it, you know, and I don't know if that has sunk in for everybody. Like, literally, if you took Dr. Evil from Austin Powers and had him sit down and make a master plan of how to take over the world, he couldn't come up with a better plan than the food pyramid for mass genocide. Literally, like, the most evil mind in the world couldn't come up. Like, the food pyramid is freaking Adolf Hitler's dream for eradicating people. Literally, that's how bad it is. It simply could not be worse. You cannot follow the food pyramid and have good health. You can't do it. It's absolutely impossible.